Tonight, we gallivant back off into the final frontier to take a look at Star Trek Picard. Then we head out to a galaxy far, far away to take a look at the latest episode of Mando. And then back to our own galaxy for DS9. All this coming up right now on The Writer Brothers. And welcome back once again to the best place to be on Tuesday night. I am, of course, your host, Mr. P.D. York, joined tonight, as always, by the lovely H. Marie and Mr. Corione, Witch in Residence. And keeping the seat warm for Pollo Zapatos, of course, we do also hope to have him back, regardless of whether Pollo's here or not, Mr. Scogliotin. Scogli, how you doing today, man?
Cheers, we're having a great night. Hoping it's quiet.
Well, it's certainly not going to be
in the store, not in the chat.
I was going to say, it's certainly not going to be quiet for us.
We need an absolute dumpster fire in the chat.
Yeah. One day we will get raided by the Wokists and it'll be nothing but a total shit show. But we're still a few thousand subscribers from such an awesome, fun time happening. Hail, of course, to Nemesis of Eden, who was here for the pregame countdown. And so to start things off, of course, while we let everybody else find their way to the show, we're going to go ahead and dive right into some pop culture news. So let's turn it over to Corione for a minute to dive into the latest and greatest shenanigans that are going on in Hollywood.
Absolutely. But first, I just wanted to say Nemesis of Eden seems extremely happy that Scogli has joined us on the stream. So, cheers out for that. All right. Well, unless you have been living under a rock for the last week, you will know that things have gotten absolutely crazy in the land of the mouse. So let's start with some of the big stuff. It was announced recently that there were going to be some layoffs in Disney. And we knew that this was probably coming. They didn't have exactly a stellar year at the box office. So this was probably going to be the case. If you follow Cameron Pasha's Patreon, and you really
and
should.
we do. The Writer Brothers is infiltrated Cameron Pasha's Patreon.
Yeah, I mean, well, and to be fair, Cameron has infiltrated us on more than one occasion, so it's all fair. But we have seen an absolute bloodbath at Disney It started by them gutting the diversity and inclusivity departments across the board throughout Disney in massive layoffs. And just recently, Victoria Alonso, the woman who is responsible for injecting a lot of the, let's say, divisive politics inside Marvel, is now gone. Now, there have been all kinds of rumors about exactly how she left, but given that Quantumania seems to be on track to be the first Marvel movie to lose money, and she was primarily running for this movie, it seems that her losses have finally caught up with her. We wish, of course, here at the Writer Brothers, we wish Victoria Alonso a wonderful career, far, far away from pop culture.
Well, I was even going to take a step further and go, I hope that you maybe take a few months off and do some introspective look at what really is important to you in life. Because while I understand and empathize with people who take certain stances on stuff, I mean, just a little bit of background about me, even though, I say it's right there in my nameplate there, Ronin Christian Mystic. I used to be one of those Bible-thumping hardcore types that was going to save the world by convincing you to follow my religion, and I get it. I used to be a virtue signaler just, for the Christians, and now I'm realizing that when the Christian right had influence, it's now kind of blown back in the form of woke, because it's the same playbook, if you really look at it closely. And I'm not trying to get I'm not trying to make this like, let's bash religion. I'm trying to make this a point here, because if she does happen to see this, look at what matters and figure out a more respectful and dignified way to get your message across. And that's really all I want to say, is if you're going to stay in pop culture. Otherwise, absolutely, we wish you fine success if you decide to move on from pop culture and want to fade away into irrelevance. Hey, you know what? We're not going to be talking about you. We're not going to be bad-mouthing you. This shit is stressful. I mean, we only have 282 subscribers on this channel, and there's times when I'm like, what am I doing with my life? It's so bad, no one cares, and I'm like, wait, I care. Good enough. So, I get it.
Fair.
But, yeah, so...
Yeah, so now here's the thing. She may be the first major domino to fall, but here's the trick. Victoria Alonso was as bulletproof as you could possibly get inside the mouse house. If she can go, anyone can go. And the current rumors being reported is that Bob Iger wants a face-to-face with Kathleen Kennedy. And given that the Acolyte production is being sued, I can't imagine that face-to-face is going to be a very friendly one.
I really hope they're canceling her Viking funeral, because I mean, with the way, so she claims credit for Mando, right? Well, Mandalorian ratings are going further and further down the toilet. So the original show.
To be fair though, all streaming shows across the board are going down. So there is a bit of a caveat to those numbers, if we were going to look at them in depth.
Yeah, and that's probably due to the fact that the weather's starting to improve. People are choosing to do outside activities again, because I don't know how your guys' winter was, but down here, it wasn't the worst winter, but it was definitely not a mild one either. And
we were expecting White Walkers. Basically.
Yeah, so now that it's finally, you show an inkling of warmth. I mean, you guys, it's like, what, 15 degrees Celsius is shorts and t-shirt weather or something, or like 2 degrees Celsius? I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember my differences here.
Basically, if it's above 0 Fahrenheit, we're all right, time to hit the beach, right?
Yeah, totally. Today, I was getting ready to walk out the door. I was like, Alexa, or I was like, Echo, what's the temperature? And it is 1 degree Celsius outside. I'm like, sweet. I just throw on my very, very, very light sweater. Just wait.
So it sounds like barbecue weather already.
Yeah, Scogli, where are you at anyway?
Calgary, Alberta.
Awesome. We are now evenly matched, my friend, between the awesome Canadians and the Americans.
Yeah, Team Canada.
I mean, Idaho is in a lot of ways just South Canada, not like Minnesota, South Canada. I mean, like you guys have seen the show Letterkenny, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like basically like
the
Napoleon Dynamite, but Canadian version, and so we
Yeah.
totally relate to it, especially the town we live in now. Okay,
Yeah.
So
back to pop culture news.
back to the pop culture. So we've got that one. Kathleen Kennedy may be looking at the chopping block. Certainly, if Cameron Pasha's spies are to be believed, Lucasfilm is in an absolute panic right now with everyone trying to run around and quickly justify their existence inside the organization. So, a lot of people are like, well, look at all the wonderful work we've done that we're going to be trying to celebrate at Disney Celebration. So it may be Kathleen Kennedy's Viking funeral turns into an everybody trying to do the equivalent of posting up their resume.
Turns into an actual funeral like it should be, or a perp walk, because it's ridiculous. Eddie Arndt writes in, "What's up, guys? Hope everyone is well. Hail to you, Eddie Arndt. We are well, especially now that you're here watching, and we got Pollo Zapatos has grown a beard and some sick dreads, and decided to work at Shell, and also sounds like Scogliotin. Anyway, now he wishes he was that talented.
So there is one other small piece of news. It's probably, given how people feel on this channel about the Orville, it's probably not even worth mentioning. But
gross. If it's not Discovery, I don't care. No, God, I can't even. Sorry. I'm really trying,
right.
but
no.
I can't take myself seriously when I try to
saying that,
endorse
New
Trek.
Words came out of your mouth. Go wash your mouth out with soap. Go on.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
But
screw it.
But yeah. Okay. Well, while PD washes his mouth out, we have news on the Orville renewal, actually. And currently the way it stands is because of all the flux that Hulu is currently under, because it's possible that Disney will be selling its share of Hulu and would have to offer it to Turner. But since the Orville is a Fox property, everything is up in the air. And that is why we have not heard anything about a season 4 renewal yet. However, according to Seth MacFarlane recently in an interview, he has said that he is still very optimistic about getting a season 4.
I mean, it's... First of all, since we could use some shorts material, I'm going to go ahead and wash that stupid remark about Discovery out like I've been requested, so here we go. Okay, just a little bit now. Come on. Maybe. It's clogged.
Oh,
great.
God. All right, well, then you've gotten a reprieve then, I guess.
There we go. Yeah.
There we go.
Kirkland brand soap actually isn't that bad. I'm going to have to do that more often. Anyway.
Berry flavored freshness.
Yeah. Oh, now it's kicking in as gross, but that was not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Huh.
Okay, I think we almost killed H. Murray with that bit.
Yeah. Now we'll have to clip that for later. Now we got a shameless 15-second short where Petey York eats soap. Anyway.
But yeah, so that's the major pop culture news.
All right.
I'm curious what you guys think, though. I mean, what with the House of Mouse on fire, with Lucasfilm, with the Lucasfilm rats preparing for dealing with the sinking ship, and hope for the Orville. It's kind of been a really good week for fandom.
Yeah, I mean the only rut in my life right now is Mandalorian, and I mean I don't say that because I'm like I'm trying to like it. I really am. And I've liked the fighter battles, but I'm a little bit more of a classy girl here. You gotta win me over with more than just fancy, flashy visuals. I gotta get some more substance, but...
I have some news from inside sources on the production. So I know what all this is building to. I do not want to ruin the show for anybody, but let's just say the reason why they have to do a lot of this is because not everyone has read the Dark Empire series of books.
Okay.
But I can guarantee you Dave Filoni has, and Jon Favreau has. And I think that is the best way I can put it forward.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think what's happened, though, in pop culture, and of course we'll get into that, what you're suggesting more when we get to our Mando discussion. But I think the biggest thing is this is clearly a continued repudiation of the message, and that it's gone too far. Now, I mean, I've said this before on this show. I say it on Twitter all the time. I'll say it again. I have no problem with people expressing themselves how they feel they need to express themselves. It's not an issue with specifically your message. Now, there are certain particulars I have a problem with, and we discuss those, rationally like normal people. But I don't have an issue with people wanting to share their message. It's just I'm not going to listen to it if it turns into a lecture and you decide to degrade and denigrate my characters and heroes in the process. And that's really why Picard is doing well for me, because they're actually doing it in a dignified sense. Those first 4 episodes, this is basically how New Trek should have been from the beginning, was like, okay, it's okay to do a little bit of deconstruction here and there on certain aspects of characters, but then you gotta build them back up. And that's what episodes 1 through 4 of Picard did, was we kind of saw, okay, they haven't worked together, they don't know what they're doing, they're missing all this stuff, and then, okay, we get back to, hey, Federation's about teamwork, let's do what we're good at, and then that's when we get that awesome ending in episode 4. But the point is, that's my 2 cents on it, is I think that this is clearly an indication that woke is going away, in the sense that it's getting properly declawed, and it'll just be another ideology to debate and argue like literally every other ideology. And let's just hope we learn our lesson for the umpteenth time that ideological superiority is just simply wrong, period. And that's pretty much how I feel about it. So, Scogli, you look like you got something to say.
I was just thinking about that Victoria Alonso, and I was like, she's like that lead warrior, Cherokee warrior that they painted in yellow, and he went out there and he was invincible, and then everybody was like, yeah, they're all crazy, and they went out, but as soon as that guy went down, everybody was like, oh shit, the spell was broken and it's dead.
That's an interesting comparison. H. Marie,
everybody was terrified. Nobody was safe anymore. Yeah, my brain makes interesting connections.
It's great. This is exactly the kind of stuff we needed to add to the show. So, yeah.
See, I was kind of thinking about that that scene from the Two Towers when they're fighting at Helm's Deep, and like the Uruk-hai are doing their little like Haka war dance, and then that one dude who's missing an eye lets the arrow go by accident and he kills Bob, and suddenly it's completely on. Well, I feel pandemonium. Like it's just pandemonium from that point on. I feel like Victoria Alonso was that poor Uruk-hai who took the first arrow, right? Like once she went down, everybody went crazy, and that's kind of what's going on here.
Nice. All right. Moving on now to our Picard discussion. Now, Scogli, since you are new here, we'll just explain a little bit about our recently new formula. So what we do real quick is we go around the room, we give our non-spoiler overview of the episode, our initial thoughts, so this way anyone who hasn't seen it but just wants to get a general idea of what to expect and then wants to mute us when we do a spoiler discussion can at their convenience. And so I'll just go ahead and start and say this is just still gets better and better. If you're worried about it, I mean, like I said, episode 1 through 4 it's kind of, in a lot of ways, its own self-contained mini arc, and episode 5 came on strong in ways I didn't even see coming, and I'm like, where are the rest of the episodes, Terry? Just drop all the rest of the episodes at this point. We all want to see it. We're all going to keep coming back. I'm probably going to watch it. I mean, I've watched every episode at least twice now. That's how interested and how much I'm enjoying this show. But, H. Marie, why don't you go first real quick on your non-spoiler overview for Picard?
Oh, I'm enjoying it. It definitely has me hooked there's some parts in it that definitely make me a little unhappy. But other than that, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I just don't want to say anymore because I don't want to spoil anything.
All right, Scogli, how about you? What did you think for your non-spoiler overview?
Oh man, on my first watch, I was like completely sold. Like I was under the spell. And yeah, I was in the moment and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Then I went back and I watched it again and I listened to some other people complain about it. I'm like, yeah, most of that's pretty valid, but I still thoroughly enjoyed myself. Um,
Well, I
would it
feel like
be
before we go any further on the review, though, we should go to Picard lighting.
oh,
There. I felt it was a little brighter this time, so I'm using this other light I got over here because yeah, that's perfect. It casts the right amount of. I felt they actually did turn the lights on finally, but it also helps that the episode may or may not have taken place at red alert as often. Anyway,
Yeah.
Corey Young, go ahead with your initial non-spoiler overview.
Okay, personally, there was a lot of this episode that felt like it was trying to fill in the missing gaps on other episodes that have come before for me. Like we got explanations on how certain things progressed from the previous episodes, but I also felt like this episode dragged for me. Like personally, I just felt like it dragged. I want explanation, I want exposition, I want science back in the science fiction, and I just don't feel like we're going to get it here. I feel like we're going to go from talking in hallways to action set piece to more talking in hallways to more action set piece. And I get that makes for exciting moments, but I feel like the connective tissue is missing. Right? That's just kind of where I'm at. It may just be that for me, Star Trek has lost the magic and I can't find it again. But and if you have that magic, hey man, I'm so happy for you. I'm just not finding it right now. And I do hope they are able to find that formula and get the right mix, but it hasn't occurred for me yet. So that's kind of where I'm at.
All right, well, fair enough. We will go ahead and go to spoiler alert, and let's get into the meat and potatoes of this thing. I think for you, Corion, it's probably to come down to how the rest of the story plays out from here on out, because by the end, I mean, first of all, watching the episode and having rewatched all the other episodes at this point, there are a few things that really, this is what stands out for me. First of all, I absolutely love that we're getting the best Riker that Frakes has ever given us. Yet it's also a Riker that feels like we've watched a Star Trek Titan series with him as the captain. I feel like we already know who Captain Riker is, and that's the performance that Frakes keeps giving us is it's like, yeah, I would like to actually get a Star Trek Titan show, and if they really wanted to do an animated series, maybe not to the style of Lower Decks, but actually give us like a serious Star Trek Titan animated Star Trek show, I'm all for it. I'm also ready for this Star Trek Titan, to be perfectly honest. I think Shaw is fantastic, and it just, the time keeps vindicating, and I think really that's probably that's probably going to be what I really hope and I really think is going to be what wins you over, Corey, is probably the final resolution at this point. It's not traditional.
I really hope so.
It's not traditional TNG Star Trek at all. It's TNG using the later seasons of DS9 method, where we have long-going arcs with mini arcs in between, and
that works for me. Like, I have no problem with that kind of storytelling. The problem I have boils down to, okay, we go from the what the hell is the deal with the Shrike mystery box to what the hell is with Picard's kid mystery box, to, we finally got the reveal on how changelings are getting on board Federation ships mystery box as well, right? We're still getting the mystery boxes. We're still getting the Titan curse remains. As soon as Shaw got the command codes back, he went immediately from 0 to a-hole in no seconds flat. I don't know, man. I'm at this point where I'm like, one, Shaw, if they put him in a command position ever again, I think I'm just going to want to shake my monitor until he falls out of the series. Two, I get they're trying to make Warfall spiritual and whatnot, but it's getting a little much. And
I don't know. I like how he one-handed manhandled Raffi with that fight, though. That was awesome.
Well, I do get that Jack Crusher, supposedly when he accesses, I don't know, the Red Room or something, he goes to absolute badass mode. But, like, dude, it's 4 changelings. If this was Deep Space Nine, they would have rocked the hell out of him, even if he's moving at ninja speeds. Right?
All right, so Hannah wants to take that one real quick. Also, hail, Orville Nation. Glad you're here.
Okay, so I actually have a theory because you listed off your 3 mystery boxes, right? I think they're all tied together. And this was actually where I was going with my point in our earlier discussion was the reason the changelings look the way they do is, my theory is that they are partially human or partially more of a humanoid versus the actual just liquid. And so that's why it kind of has that more fleshy look when they disintegrate and when you see it like go up into the wall. It's my other theory though is that Jack is either the main like human for this new evolution of species, but because he keeps having the flashes with the red veins and I'm like, okay, that looks like he maybe was a bottle baby or something where he was grown in a lab. But the voices that he keeps hearing, you can hear Vadic's voice in the whispers that he's hearing. You can actually hear it and it's different sounds. So I'm like, okay, we also know she's a changeling or some variation thereof. But I think they're all connected, and I think the reason that they want Jack so badly is because they're trying to become fully human or closer to human, and he's the link.
Maybe. But that changes their whole motivation from Deep Space Nine entirely.
Well, it's already been established that these are separate from the main link. They're defectors, and they're a whole different type of like, they're a separate new link. It's actually, it's kind of similar to a storyline that used to be in Star Trek Online.
Yeah, with Lars's link, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That arc is still there. So I think that's been established, and so it's not the same new link. It's not the same link. It's a bunch of defectors that for whatever reason broken off. So I think it's gonna pay off in the end for you, Corion. Someone I met recently had expressed vehemently how much they hate weekly shows. And I've never actually encountered somebody like this before, but this is something like they can't stand weekly releases, even like back in the days of the like 90s television where you had to record shit on VCR. So I'm starting to think that with this particular show, this might not have been the one to do. This might have been one to do either chunks of episodes each week, like 3 or 4, or have dropped it all at once so people can just binge it all at the same time. And I'm starting to see that because I personally prefer the weekly releases. I like being able to do our show this way. Of course, we made it work with Terminalist by just watching them and encouraging the community to watch along. But I like being able to digest an episode. I like being able to have, water cooler conversations with friends, about what's going to happen. I like speculating. I like all of that. It seems in this instance for you, you're so turned off by Star Trek that it's just more of the same in a lot of ways, and that maybe releasing the story all at once would be good enough, because I guess too, since I am a conspiracy writer and I understand the necessity of mystery box writing, I'm not as bothered by it as most other people. So it's it seems that there's wisdom in having certain shows release all at once, and I'm starting to see that based on how you're reacting to the show. And you're not, you said you're not catching the magic, and I'm like, well, I wonder if the magic would be there if all the episodes were there and we could just do that. So
maybe. I mean, and I do get it. Like, look, we saw the problem with the binge model with the last 2 seasons of the the 2 seasons of the Expanse, the previous to the last season, where they binged it, and it was in the news cycle for like a week and then vanished. Right. So I do understand the inherent problems on both sides of the equation. Right. There are pluses and minuses for each. I just feel like the way Paramount is doing this was probably about, like, initially designed like 3 movies that were supposed to tie together. And so they split it up into a series of episodes so that they can stretch it out over Paramount Plus and keep subscriptions for like 2 months. Right?
Right. And that's, so from a business standpoint, I can see that. That's why my answer to all of this is to try a hybrid model of release schedule, like 2 or 3 episodes a week. There's more than enough time to get through those episodes, but then you're also not overburdened with the plot as it's happening. You do get a chance to digest some of it. And I mean, you know, within 2 weeks, we'd be 6 episodes deep and then looking at the finale after about 3 or 4 weeks. That's not a bad runtime for a show, and that still keeps it relevant. But then it also gives your audience the chance to watch the show at their pace, and if they want to watch more right away, they can. And then on top of that, for the ones who want to wait for the whole binging, they don't have to wait as long. I think we just came up with the best way to do streaming models if we're going to have a running show. Nemesis of Eden.
I think it boils. Oh,
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it boils down to what kind of story you're telling.
Yes.
Because I think the story should dictate the pace of the story.
Right. So with Strange New Worlds trying to return to episodic TOS style storytelling, that would work better on a 1 to 2 episode release schedule. Whereas this show clearly should have been about 3 to 4. So that's right. Yeah. And you know, I was hooked by episode 2, even more so by episode 4. And I mean, Riker's last line in this week where he's like, you know, they're going to be coming for us. Who? Everyone. And I'm just like, it's shit just got real. Like, they're on their own now. Like, this is not the stakes that I thought were coming. And so now they've got Worf and Raffi, and they're gonna pick him up. And, well, like, how are they getting out of this? I have no idea. Like, this is really good corner writing. Nemesis of Eden writes in, I wonder if Jack is part changeling or is possessed by a paw wraith, and they want something that's hidden behind a red door. Sleeper Cell Jack is scary deadly, as he's supposed to steal something, I think, steal or take control of. Red is such a visually striking color that seems to initiate a subconscious sense of aggression and assertiveness, and it draws the eye. Yeah, I mean, you know, I had a red Camaro for a time. It was awesome. I bet
the speeding tickets were awesome too.
Oh yeah, no, $249 for, you know, doing 80 and a 55, no big deal. It was that's miles per hour. Sorry, in kilometers that's like 8,000 or something. No, yeah, no, it was. Anyway, we're not talking about Camaros yet. Yeah, no, I think Jack, there's more to Jack than what we understand. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up untwisting the twist and it turns out, oh, he isn't actually Picard's son. That was like a changeling lie or something. I have no idea. I have no idea, and I'm okay. Like, this is what I think is a staple of a good conspiracy, is the fact that I have no clue, and I haven't been able to predict most of the shit that's happened thus far. But, Skogli, you've been patient, and I know you've been excited to talk about it, so why don't we turn it over to you now?
Oh man, yeah, I think the changelings are they've been genetically modified, I think, to be able to pass certain tests, but they had to give up some of their powers in the process. Like, like in the hallway with Jack when he whoops all their asses. Like, wouldn't you think that they would just like they could just Mr. Fantastic the gun out of his hand, right? Just whoop, just grab it, like you know.
I
They're supposed
also
to be really strong.
well, yeah, and
So
I'll just add to that point real quick by saying I also think that there was a bit of hubris involved there. They assume that they, you know, four changeling super beings, whatever, versus one human. We'll be fine. Oh, we underestimated him.
yeah.
Okay,
Um.
I've actually got a theory as to what's happening in Picard, and it explains everything we've seen so far. And I think
Okay.
I want to put it out there because if I'm
Changelings.
right, well, changelings, but
Need
if
to
I'm
Photoshop
right,
Terry Metalis' head on that with that caption. Changelings.
oh yeah, but if I'm right on this, okay, I want credit for it because, you know, I want a hashtag Corion was right one day. But here we go. Here's what it is. I think that the changelings have evolved so that they can basically turn themselves into some sort of virus that they infect regular people with. And that person then slowly starts changing into a changeling. That would explain the captain of the Shrike. It explains how they've infiltrated into the Federation this deeply. And it explains Jack Crusher and why he is such a badass, because he is slowly altering into a changeling. And it also explains why they look like meat Play-Doh hybrid things now. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. If I'm right on that one, I want it on record of saying that whoever's writing this series is not nearly as smart as they think they are.
The one question I want to know the answer to is why does it? So when they dissect the organs will stay intact, right? But if you dissect them to a certain smallness, they will revert back to changeling goo. So why, when you take a blood test, does the blood not revert back to changeling goo?
Well, this is why my theory of, because they started as organic beings, starts to hold a little more weight, right? Because they're not fully changelings yet.
Nemesis of Eden writes in, what's your take on the growths he's seeing when he hallucinates? I think that plays right into Corion's theory perfectly. And Pollo Zapatos decided to show up. Welcome. Yeah, it's actually a really good theory, and I wouldn't say that they're not as smart. I'd say that you're just not as stupid as you think. So
I'm willing to accept that I'm brilliant. I'll take that.
On this point, not eternally. You're still just have the capability to be dumb some days too. But hey, so do I. All right, but Skogly, you have any more follow-up comments?
The red door. When he gets to the red door and opens it up, I think he'll be under full possession of a paw ray.
Okay.
That's
also solid theories. Great discussion so far, guys. It's
been I don't know if you guys have discussed you know the creature that she summons by chopping off her hand, right?
Yeah.
She like gives up a piece of her body and allows it to be possessed by a Pal Ray in order for communication, right? Is that your feeling? What's going on there?
Well,
I think it's actually a changeling that's more or less taken up residence inside her bloodstream.
Which is also another solid and very
interesting.
possible theory too. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, no. But I will say for the highlights of this episode, oh my gosh, the whole thing with bringing Ro-Laren back, I did not see that one coming at all. And that whole exchange between her and Picard was so brilliantly done, all the way up until the end. And yeah, I'm sad that she died, but I mean, what a way to go. Totally like a Bajoran freedom fighter. And
it was moving.
And we're gonna find out what she died for in the process, and I think that's gonna make it even more emotionally impactful on subsequent rewatches. Michelle Forbes absolutely killed it. I was like, I kind of detected hints of Commander Kane from Admiral Kane from Battlestar Galactica, excuse me, but I also, I could tell that this was grown up Ro-Laren. This was her fulfilling her purpose, and I think that all of that character interaction was not just well written, but certainly well acted. I totally believed that Picard was going through an emotional shift throughout the entire thing, and realized that in the end, you know what, it wasn't about vengeance or petty justice. It was about recognizing the why and, learning to find forgiveness, and he did. And so, Nemesis...
For the record, though, don't ever meet Michelle Forbes.
Oh.
Okay.
Well,
having met her, don't ever meet her.
I don't. Is she very non-personable?
Yeah.
Might have been had a similar experience to Nemesis when he met Mr. Shatner.
I didn't know Nemesis met Shatner. That's awesome. I mean, don't meet her. It sounds like she probably isn't the type that wants to be met anyway, and you know what? That's fine. I respect actors that just want to do the job and be left alone.
Well, she was at a con at the time, so it kind of, yeah.
Maybe she just got roped in with a paycheck and,
Yeah. I will say this, though. Do meet Avery Brooks. If you get the chance, just don't play him in a game of pool. You will lose.
Oh.
I'm used to losing at pool all the time, so I'll just have a drink. As long as I'm drunk, I don't care.
Yeah, but he doesn't play for less than $60 a ball. I know this by experience.
Nemesis of Eden in the chat says, I felt that was how she connected to the great chain of separatists because they aren't as strong. Perhaps they need that circle of liquid to be a conduit. Yeah. And then writes in F. William Shatner, to put it as politely as possible. Well, I'm very sorry that you were disappointed. And if we ever meet in real life, which that's the plan in the future, we want to host some TWB bashes. I hope I don't disappoint, but set your expectations to disappointment. Because I'm just human and I suck too. All right. I think overall this episode was good. Like I said, it left on a all stakes are high and very thin kind of situation. And I think what's going to happen is that's what's probably going to explain why Picard sees. I think that the whole implication of Starfleet being infiltrated, this isn't new for this season. I think that's what they're going to imply also happened in season 1. And I can't speak to season 2 because I didn't watch it, so I don't really care. But
we're stoked for some Geordie LaForge.
Oh yeah, I have seen and I'm really glad they're using the rank of Commodore again, because as somebody who served in the actual U.S. military, one of the stupidest things that I always hated was that after Captain they have Rear Admiral lower half, and then Rear Admiral upper half, and then Vice Admiral, and then just Admiral. Just call it just go Commodore, Rear Admiral, Vice Admiral. Why do we have 2 admirals of similar distinction when we had Commodore? Which made sense, because a Commodore isn't really an admiral, but a Commodore can command up to about 2 or 3 ships in a situation, so it works. But, yeah. So, thank you for the nice comments, Nemesis, but
Did you see the shot of him sitting at his desk there with the Zephyr Cochrane statue on it?
I read a tweet from Dave Blass that apparently when Jordy, people probably call him Jordy and he takes it anyway. He seems like the type of person. But LeVar walked on set and apparently he was ecstatic when he saw that statue, because that's when he knew that that his character was actually going to be kept his character and not necessarily deconstructed the way we've seen. And that tells me that the production crew for Picard Season 3 decided to actually go back to Star Trek. So I'm excited to see... I've been excited to see Geordi since day one. And I'm curious to see what they do with lore. And I'm curious to see how all this ties into the grand conspiracy.
Well, when it comes to Geordi, I have a very serious, very important question. We have seen evidence that Geordi has a daughter. Who the hell married Geordi? The entire Next Gen series is a one failed relationship of his after another. Who finally bit the phaser and married Geordi?
It'll be interesting if they tie it into some character that we know.
Right? Like, you know, I
Guinan out of pity.
Yeah.
I'm over 300 years old, whatever.
Oh, each Marie's got a theory.
Oh, I was gonna say Uhura's daughter or granddaughter. Potentially, I don't know.
Maybe. We don't really know what happens to Uhura's lineage after TOS, but that could be an interesting tie-in.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I have no idea, and that is something I didn't even think about. Good point. Good point, though. All right. Any final thoughts on Picard's episode 5?
How many more of these do we have to go through?
We're halfway through, buddy. It's all downhill from here. Hopefully, in the number of episodes remaining, not in quality. Unlike Strange New Worlds, which starts off really strong with episode 1, and well, okay, it's actually more of a gradual decline, and then it drops off. Yeah, we don't need to talk about that ever again. I promise. Except for episode 1. I still like episode 1. All right, heading off now.
Episode 1 as well.
To a galaxy far, far away. If you have been keeping up with the latest Mandalorian season, congratulations. You made it this far. We'll keep going because Corione likes it. And, yeah. But first, let's go ahead and start things off with the truth. And that is, of course, that the dark side...
Well, the truth is the dark side has cookies!
They finally found their cookies for the dark side. So, yeah, well, we got non-spoiler overview first, so I'll just go through it. I'm still trying to figure out what I watched. I have no idea. And I don't know what importance this contained story has, and I felt kind of cheated having overall, I'm still going to watch it because Star Wars, and I hope it improves. Since you're willing to stick out Picard, fair is fair. So I'd hope that by the end of this Mando season, we're like, all right, there's hope for Star Wars. But I'm going to be honest, my hope is in Trek right now. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and go around. Scogli, what did you think of this week's Mandalorian non-spoiler overview?
This episode was frustrating because, like, the first, I think it's 8 minutes was like, yes, I'm all about it. Like, this is good. I'm here for this. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, who are these people? I shouldn't have to Google who these people are. And it's like, I did. Is it a spoiler to say that it goes 35 minutes without seeing the Mandalorian, and then we get about 5 minutes of some more awesome Mandalorian at the very end?
No, that's not a spoiler. That's a warning.
I was so mad I was confused and furious by the end of that 35 minutes, but when it finally wrapped up, I was like, okay, that was okay, I guess, but what show did I just watch? Did I just watch a tie-in from Andor? Like, what is this?
That's yeah. Corione, why don't you go ahead?
All right. So this episode, I do think was made for the people that are exceptionally deep in the Star Wars universe lore, specifically the pre-Disney lore. There's a lot of pieces it touches from before that. I'll wait for the spoiler section to really get into it. But this episode, you are going to come back to again and again and again because of the importance of some of the things that we got information about in this episode. Okay? This is going to be one of those episodes that you're going to go, oh, I remember this is why they talked about this, right? This was an exposition dump primarily for this episode, okay? It is setting up the remainder of the season by doing this. We get a lot of information. A lot of it does feel, like, hey, why are we getting all of this in one dump? I do definitely think that they probably could have split this up over the next couple of episodes, but given the time constraints that they have for the series, I'm willing to bet that's why they had to do it this way. Now, that being said, there are some great moments in this episode. There's some deep, deep lore stuff they give us about Coruscant in general. There is some awesome stuff that we get to see involving Mando. And there are some really cool interviews that Katie Sackhoff did after this episode went live that explains how her character's feelings and motivations are going forward. So this is the build-up episode to the remainder of the series, but we needed this kind of exposition dump in order to be able to get it. So knowing that and knowing where they're drawing from in the original lore, like the legends for Star Wars, we're building to something really good here.
Yeah. H. Marie, your thoughts? Okay, we'll come back. It's like, I'll try to keep this non-spoiler before we move on. For me, it's the execution of this has been sloppy. And not in like a fun seconds kind of way. It's more like I get what you're saying and I get where it's going. It's just, it feels narratively speaking that there's more structure currently in the Picard narrative versus this one, which is like, okay, they want to establish all this stuff, but then, and I think the problem stems from Book of Boba Fett and the fact that we got a Mandalorian episode in the middle of that, which was like confusing because,
well, like 3 episodes really.
It's really,
All those were good episodes.
They were the only reason to watch Book of Boba Fett, and the rest of the show was disappointing, which, you know, I felt bad for because, like I said, the guy who plays Boba deserves a better show. So I just, again, we go back to having all the episodes dropped at once. Maybe that would have helped Mandalorian this season since things were already so rocky. I get what you're saying about the time and whatnot, but Disney needs to be making short-sighted decisions right now because this is the time to keep the boat afloat. Not, okay, let's look at the long term. Let's look at the let's look at the merchandising. Let's look at all that. And it's like, no, you guys need to just be continuing to put band-aids on your sinking ship right now. It's about, it's about just keeping enough water out of the hull to get to the next port, not getting the deck dry in the process. You guys are beyond that point right now, and it's time to just do little things. And at this point, it would probably make more sense for Disney to just drop all the Mandalorian episodes at once because viewership is going down the toilet. Now, of course, that might not necessarily be because Mando's bad. It could also just be that springtime's upon us and people want to go outside and not stream all the time. But go ahead, H. Marie, with your thoughts regarding your non-spoiler overview for Mando.
Well, the best way I can put it is, Corione, your hate for Picard. I'm unfortunately headed that way with Mandalorian unless it picks up because there's no hooks for me. Unfortunately, I used to love Star Wars. And I'm watching it, and they tried, but unless it picks up, that's it for me. To be perfectly honest, I can't anymore.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be a little weird because I'm still watching it to the end. But we'll go ahead and go to spoiler alert once again, and let's pick this thing apart. So the lesson in this week's episode is if a girl finds you interesting and you're the nerdy type, she's gonna betray you. Which you should have known that by now. I mean, that's just been the life lesson that has been society since the dawn of society. So you're waiting for H. Marie's inevitable betrayal? Pretty much. I mean, it's going to happen and be like, yeah, I mean, I'm surprised we made it 8 years. But anyway, I'm just kidding, babe. No. I just happened to get lucky and, managed to fake it for long enough. And now she's stuck with me. It's okay. I wouldn't want to be married to me either. Scogli, why don't you go ahead and go first, and then we'll see if Corione can sell us again, and then,
All right, so I Googled this guy, and I was like, "Who, doctor?" I didn't even know his name, and I was like, this guy, like, figured out what his name was. Like, okay, so he was the genetic doctor that was experimenting on Grogu in season 1?
Yes. 1 and 2. Yes.
Okay. Why? I've seen seasons 1 and 2, and I genuinely have no memory of that whatsoever. I don't know. um, yeah, I thought it was really bizarre how they went back to this guy and they put so much time into him only to basically kill him at the end of the episode as a vehicle to introduce a different character. What?
They didn't kill him.
I know. Wow, he's basically brain dead now. Well, he's not brain dead, but he's going to be a different person now, right?
Yeah. Okay, so the machine they hooked him up to was originally used by the Empire for indoctrination, but the New Republic figured out how to use it to deprogram these Imperials. Well, she just turned the switch up to 11 to re-indoctrinate him into the Empire.
Okay. So
I didn't think of that.
If you're on a bullet train that's going, what, 300 kilometers an hour, and you jump off of it onto a mattress, how far are you going to fly when you bounce off that mattress?
Fair.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely
150 feet. I don't know.
Yeah,
that doesn't sound unreasonable to me.
To be fair, whereas Corione,
they did it holding hands.
Whereas Corione says that he's he misses the science in it. To be fair, Star Wars has never really been a science-y show, so I'm willing to. I mean, I can accept sort of overlooking the practicality in the Star Wars rules because Star Wars doesn't really have strict rules, if at all. So actually, the Star Wars rules move at the change at the convenience of the plot. So let's be honest.
I would also argue this: if you notice while they're in the train station, all the security guys are kind of giving them the stink eye. There's a reason for that, and the reason is because they think that the Imperial comm officer chick is on their side. They had already let them know that this was going on. So you could even make the argument that during this whole sting operation, they intentionally slowed down the train when she was getting off so that, one, it doesn't look easy to Dr. Pershing, so they can find out what he's actually supposed to be working on.
Yeah. Right. Let's catch up on some fan mail real quick, and then we'll continue. Nemesis Veden writes in, says, you wouldn't touch the mattress. You'd fly straight into those containers and become a red paste in the cratered metal. Excuse me. And then Several writes in, I think this is all leading to explain how the Emperor was resurrected in Episode 9. I kind of have those fears going on too, Several, and I just, it's, if this, I'm going to be honest, if this show ends up confirming the Kathleen Kennedy fan fiction timeline, I'm not watching Star Wars anymore. I'm pretty much going to hang up my Jedi robe and move on. Now, that said, I'm open to being surprised. That's why I said, maybe Disney, you guys need to think about just dropping all the episodes at once at this point, because if viewership is down, then, or at least put them in chunks. Give us 2 to 3 episodes a week for the remainder of the episodes so we can get this over with, and then we, the reviewers, can get our reviews out there, and you can change my mind, and I can actually promote good quality material. I know, novel concept, but the sooner we get this season over with at this point, sadly, the sooner I think it's going to be better. CC Karaoke writes in, same for me with Star Trek. If Metalis show confirms any Kurtzman Trek plot lines, I'm immediately out. Well, I mean, it kind of has as far as the previous Picard seasons. But like I said backstage, when it comes to Star Trek Discovery, it's just a Section 31 conspiracy. Who cares? Move on. Just chalk it up to Section 31 shenanigans and time travel and nonsense, and then we can forget about it. Severo says, okay. Sadly, I think we've already confirmed this leading to the sequel trilogy. When it's official, I'll jump off the Star Wars train. But I understand if everybody else is losing interest, and if our reviews are good enough for you, hey, we are here for our audience. That's why we do this, is so you guys can watch us at your convenience and, either take our opinions or throw them in the trash. And thankfully, with Picard and Mando, we do have a diverse pool of opinions, so it's working out, actually, overall. Yeah, I liked. All right, I will. All right, I'll do the positives thing. So the things I did like, the Coruscant beauty shots were really nice. I did get some Old Republic vibes with the droid traveling around. So I didn't like. I was trying to find stuff I liked about it. It's just, it was like by the end I just didn't care. But if you think that he's being recruited for the Empire and the First Order, and there's more to go for that, and it doesn't end up being Snoke or the Emperor or whatever, I'm down to see where it ends. So.
Okay. Here's what I know based on having read all the Legacy books. This is turning into the story of Dark Empire, which basically Thrawn comes back with his 7th fleet, takes a look at what happened to the Empire, because he's all like, yo, what happened? Realizes that really the way that everybody keeps getting beaten is really powerful Jedi leading troops tends to win wars. So what does he do? He arranges to have Luke cloned from the hand that he lost on Bespin, and we have a evil Luke more or less leading troops. Pershing is the one that in that storyline basically builds the clone.
Yep. Real quick, if you can hold that thought. Nemesis of Eden says, anyway, I must be off. A wonderful show so far. Enjoying Skogley's insights as well as everyone else's, of course. Stay amazing, you beautiful people. You too, Nemesis of Eden.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, see ya.
Okay. So what I think is going to happen is, if we noticed in that speech that he was giving in front of the Republic, we noticed that he's talking about grabbing certain DNA strands and grafting them onto others to create a hybridized clone. I think they're going to try to be using Grogu's DNA and his ability with the Force to then be manipulated into troopers for Thrawn's new army.
Oh, reborns.
Yeah, basically, exactly, right? So that's going to be the plan. Now, there's also a couple of other pieces on here. Katie Sackhoff, in an interview after this episode came out, commented that this is the first time her character has felt like she's been in a family in a long time. And she also let loose that according to the rules in this group, The Watch, that married couples can see each other without their helmet on. Now, why would she know that unless something's going to start happening with him?
Oh, she's going to marry the armorer chick.
Well, there's a lot of theories that the armorer chick actually may be somebody from her family. So there's some interesting pieces there.
So we've gone from Florida Mandalorian to Alabama Mandalorian.
Yeah. So there's some interesting pieces here, but that's some of the big stuff. So the reason why we had to go through all this exposition had a lot to do with setting up the big reveal at the end, which is we're going to have these reborn, Jedi, dark side force wielders that we're going to be going up against. The stakes are going to get that much higher. They've already teased a mythosaur. If we don't see a mythosaur being ridden by the end of this, I'd be shocked. And you have to admit, if Bo-Katan shows up riding a mythosaur and Din Djarin has the Darksaber, they're going to unite the damn Mandalorian clans right then and there.
So it'll be a political marriage. Yeah, makes sense. Several writes in and says, I think Jon Favreau officially already said that Mandalorian reaches the sequel trilogy. Okay, I actually saw that article. I commented on that article. And, of course, CC Karaoke came in to correct some information that the article that I think you might have seen or something similar was a bit more on the clickbaity side, and that his actual quote is more ambiguous than leads on. And I think he's just playing the safe card for the public right now. I think that all of this is supposed to be timed to line up with Kathleen's departure, because here's the thing. why would they do all? Why would, if they're gonna keep the sequel trilogy, why take Kylo Ren out of the opening Star Wars bumper? That's like the face of the sequels, unfortunately or fortunately. So it's yeah, I'm not sure either, Severo. So it could be anything. We just this is why I'm just gonna watch the show, see how it plays out, and if Thrawn is coming back post Empire Thrawn is coming, I'll be honest. If Kyle Katarn walks on the screen, that might be enough to keep me. I would probably just stay on. If they decide to go the Jedi Outcast route and give us a Jedi Knight story live action show, I'm in. I just take the video game script, do it word for word, and then that's it. That's all you need. It's fan service, but I don't care. Kyle Katarn's one of the best Jedi who ever lived.
Hey man, I'll take Cal Kestis at this point.
I'm not totally sold on it yet, but I also have to finish Fallen Order and then get ready for the new game. So that's just me. Sorry.
Okay,
like I said, I really want. When I played Jedi Outcast for the first time, I still hold that as one of the greatest Star Wars games ever made. The only downside is you can't hang. That was probably the worst mistake they made in that game. Otherwise, everything else is fantastic. Story, power creep, and the fact that on the PC you can basically do New Game Plus with mods. I mean, it's awesome. But we'll see. Real quick, CC Karaoke writes in, yes, possible Jake Skywalker. I mean, hopefully they don't actually confirm those movies that way, but I'll take Dark Empire. Cameron was right. And then Karaoke follows up, agreed. Both interviews, he is saying more that they have 30 years of time to play with leading up to the established canon. Not that they will connect them, just playing coy. So, all we can do is watch and wait with this. And so, go ahead, Scogli.
If you watch the interview that article was talking about, he's got a really Hollywood beaten around the bush kind of way of speaking. But the one sentence that really stood out to me was when he was like, I'm paraphrasing drastically, but he was like, we're not really sure what canon is or what we're going to use. So we're going to have some meetings and we're going to talk to the fans. And like, I don't know where, this is going to connect to the sequel trilogy you got from that.
Well, like I said,
I was very excited.
Yeah, see, you actually studied the source, unlike some of us dumbasses who jump to conclusions, and it's so I don't know, and I think I don't know, and I think with the Veil of the Force, anything's possible. Ever since the Veil of the Force came in the picture in Rebels, anything is possible. So,
we got.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we got a resurrected, Ahsoka Tano out of that deal, right? Anything's possible at this point.
Yeah, and that's obviously canon because Ahsoka has now showed up in, Mandalorian. So, yeah, we'll see. Any last thoughts for Mandalorian? Any hopes, dreams, predictions?
Well, my predictions are this. This season is going to end in an Empire Strikes Back kind of fashion, where the bad guys are going to seem almost insurmountable, but there's still hope that they can be beaten. So I think that's where we're going to wind up with this. And if it does, I think we're going to be in a good spot.
Sever writes in, I think we're most certainly going to see Grand Admiral Thrawn on Ahsoka.
Yeah, that's basically been confirmed.
I mean, there's on the Ahsoka show. Oh, sorry. I guess Rule 34 popped in my
Where
head.
did you go? Rule 34?
Look, I just read the comments and I try to hope for the best, and that's what came to mind. I hate springtime so much. Glad I'm not alone. Yeah. Any last thoughts on Mandalorian before we move on to DS9? Okay, well.
Nah, that's it.
I also forgot to set up the thing, so it's actually going to take a second. Yeah, I think, I don't know. We'll just have to see how it plays out. Like I said, I'd be totally stoked if we get, Kyle Katarn. but that's just me. All right, this week for DS9, we had an O'Brien Must Suffer double feature, so to speak. Yeah, a couple of really
I was
great.
going to open with that.
A couple of really great episodes overall. That is not. That is also not. There we go. That looks better. Couple of really great episodes overall, and but also just kind of episodes. So, who wants to do synopsis for the first one?
So this is for Blood Oath?
Yeah. Yes, that's what we were on.
Or was
No.
it Armageddon?
Wait. Yes, Armageddon game first, actually.
Armageddon game, sorry. Yeah, Armageddon game and Whispers then, right?
Yeah, actually, I just pulled it up. I'll go ahead and where's the synopsis? There we go. All right, here we go. Bashir and O'Brien are in a laboratory in orbit of Talani 3. They are helping the Talani and Kelleroon to try to destroy dangerous biological weapons called harvesters. They were used by both species in a devastating war, which lasted for a long time. Recently, they signed a peace accord and now want to destroyed any reference to the harvesters to ensure they will never be used again. Bashir and O'Brien managed to neutralize one of the harvesters, and both species are very pleased. They even invite them to a celebration party. When the last harvester is about to be destroyed, suddenly two armed Kelleroon enter the laboratory and start shooting everyone. Bashir and O'Brien are the only barely able to escape but have nowhere to go. O'Brien starts repairing a transmitter. Suddenly, he gets very cold. Meanwhile, the Talani and Kelleroon ambassador travel to DS9. They bring the news of the passing of Bashir and O'Brien in an accident. Yeah, it's an interesting episode overall. It really shows that, when you have a common cause to unite for, that anything's possible. Two of these enemies decide to consider the weapon the enemy. They, of course, take it too far and decide to kill two innocent people that helped them because they're, a little bit misguided on their belief.
Well, they also axed all the doctors and guys from their side too, right?
That doesn't make it okay.
No, I'm just saying that it was more than two people.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, okay, yeah, if you want to say that the ones that treated it, yeah, fair enough. So they decide to unite and commit genocide anyway. Lovely, right? But at least it's less genocide than what would be if they were killing each other. There's more moral ambiguity in this episode than I gave it credit for. Nice job, Corion.
Thank you.
Yeah, really great episode. This, of course, we get to finally kind of start to see the ending of the Bashir O'Brien hate and the beginning of
the great bromance.
Maybe.
Bromance.
I mean, John is in the chat lurking, so we got to still be careful about it. Yeah, they'll never be friends at this point. Obviously, it's too much to O'Brien's just being cordial at this point. Of course, O'Brien's the one that gets infected, so he has to go through the sickness, and I mean, like we established in season 1, O'Brien must suffer.
Of course.
So, go ahead.
What struck me as interesting about this episode is, having studied as much ancient history as I have, both Genghis Khan and the pharaohs of old, when they were put to rest, they included the engineers of their tombs in order to make sure that nobody could break back in and loot these tombs, right? Or in the case of Genghis Khan, so that no one would know where the Great Khan was actually buried. Now, that's what struck me from this was so devastating, they wanted to make sure no one could ever replicate this ever again. So they got rid of all data and anybody and any person involved in it. Now, well, I definitely think that's reprehensible. I do understand the logic, even if I disagree with it. What to me was the most interesting piece of this, though, was yes, O'Brien must suffer, but we also got to see Keiko being like the good wife Keiko, right? She knew her husband so damn well that she was able to figure out that something was amiss here right then and there because of a cup of coffee. And I'm like, Yeah, my wife knows me that well. You know, like right 100%. My wife knows me that well. Like she'd probably sit there like if it was my wife and I was ordering coffee, she'd probably be like, "No, that wasn't the most ridiculously caffeinated coffee mankind has ever known. It didn't come out of the replicator looking more like soil than actual coffee. It couldn't possibly have been my husband's cup of coffee." So, you know, like I drink coffee that you have to cut it with a knife and fork. So, you know, this is you know, so I totally get that, right? I do get the logic that was going on there, and I thought it was really good, right? I thought this was like a perfect vehicle for Keiko to take a little bit of the stage for a good long while. You know, I liked that they flushed out O'Brien and Bashir's relationship a little bit, and they established that, you know, Bashir wants to know engineering, and you know, O'Brien can literally do this blindfolded when it comes to setting up equipment. So, you know, these were really nice character developments for anyone who didn't know O'Brien before and we're getting to know him now, and for Bashir to show what kind of person Bashir really is. Because you'll notice that Bashir is all, "Oh, I don't know what the hell we're going to do. I'm panicking," kind of thing, until he realizes O'Brien's sick. And then his whole demeanor changes. He goes into doctor mode. He goes into, "I need to keep this dude alive until we can get him to somewhere where I can actually fix this." And, you know, that was good. That was good to see, right? There was a lot of interesting pieces here. And, you know, overall, I thought it was a pretty solid episode, and it establishes the relationships the characters have really, really well. And yes, O'Brien must suffer, but O'Brien must always suffer. You know, that's the sacrifice he makes to be such a good engineer, is that he must be tortured for it.
Yeah, no, I mean it really is it's a good episode overall, especially for a bad guy of the week scenario where everything's, you know, tidied up by the end of the 45-minute run. And great character development and interesting plot point. Certainly gets you to question the morality of, like, you know, what would it really, and how can we look at that in our modern day? You know, people are afraid of the nuclear bomb, for example, and it's like, to truly get rid of, you know, let me take a step further, to truly get rid of firearms, even, you know, how much knowledge how much of the human race would you realistically have to wipe out to get rid of guns? A lot, like over half, most likely, at least, because the knowledge is there. And so it's like, yes, they're going about it the wrong way, because that's not the right way to contain destructive ideas. The right way to contain destructive ideas is to talk them out, is to have the dialogues, the discussions, the, you know, I'm all about nuclear energy, because I think it's the way to get us to better energy independence. And there's lots of good ways, clean ways to go about having nuclear power as the new normal in the entire world. However, we have to continue to have respect and reverence for it. We can't just go, "Oh yeah, we're going to have nuclear powered cars and everything's going to be great." No, that's, you know, we know what that kind of force is capable of. We know what power that exists there. But we also shouldn't be afraid of it in an irrational sense to where we need to kill every nuclear physicist to get rid of nuclear weapons. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, I think it really just shows that the society is just going to end up at war again, because instead of handling ideas in a civilized and dignified manner, they're just going to stifle the creation of the weapon, assuming that knowledge is actually going to go away. And either whether or not they, you know, rebuild the harvester by finding out that, oh, they didn't destroy all the knowledge, or somebody's just going to create another weapon in the future anyway, whether it's a few hundred years, whether it's a few thousand years. So it just seems like, okay, you're going about this to try to get rid of this evil technology. You're going to be evil to do it. And really, you're just setting yourself up to have another evil technology replace it, instead of, like I said, talking it out. Go ahead, Scogli.
Because the harvesters are like a symptom of their thought process, right? And evil's gonna do what evil's gonna do, and they've proven themselves again here. What really stood out to me about this episode, though, was that I was like, kind of like, oh, we're let in on the secret that they're not dead. I'm like, if this was New Trek, this would be a secret, and they wouldn't take the opportunity to write dialogue for the secret, right? And then they just jump to the end, and they'd be like, I don't know. But yeah, it would draw it out as a mystery, right? We were given all the answers right from the get-go, and it's like, oh, how are they going to figure it out is the mystery. And I thought that was way more interesting.
Yeah, see, and that's why I'm excited about Picard episode 6 on, is because we had that kind of ending where we did get enough mystery boxes answered, but now it's like, how do we get out of this one? So, anyway, just to tie them in together, and well, the fact that, go ahead.
I actually wanted to jump on your comment there. Yeah, it is the daddy's gun problem, right? For those who are unaware, like, if your dad has this gun that he keeps, the handgun he keeps in the office, right? There's always the risk that some kid is going to pick it up and play with it and not have the respect for it, right? And there's really two ways you can deal with that. Petey has put forward the logic of, okay, well, then you teach responsible gun ownership, right? You teach from a young age. This is a dangerous thing, but it is a tool. And if you learn how to treat it with respect and use it appropriately, it's fine. If you fail to learn these lessons, here are the consequences, right? Or the other alternative, which is what these people seem to have gone with, is simply don't expose their kids to a weapon at all. Keep them completely out of the house. And don't talk about it. So presumably when they run into it again, they're going to have the exact same problem all over again, right? Only now they won't be in the comfort of the home. They'll be out somewhere in the wilds, right? You're absolutely right. I am 100% one of those people that absolutely believes in teaching responsible gun ownership and usage.
I think it should be required in school. In America, it used to be that firearm safety was like required in middle school, because the idea behind it is, yes, and it's really, it's not necessarily kids, with their parents that accidentally hurt themselves. It's when friends come over. That's when the tragedy usually strikes, is because a kid, a neighborhood kid or whatever comes over, and then they come across the gun, and it's like the whole point. So I understand. You're a parent who wants to keep your kids away from guns and not have, gun fetish while they live in your house. I get it. I understand it. The problem is it's unrealistic in the sense that gun safety has nothing to do with gun fetishization. Gun safety has to do with if your kid that you don't want to be around these guns encounters one of these in the wild, as you say, whether it's lying out at a range or fell off a truck during a shipment, you just don't know. In any situation, you're going to find a weapon. This is how you clear it. You don't point it at anything you don't intend to destroy. And, that's...
You always assume it's loaded until you've checked yourself.
Yes, absolutely. It seems redundant, but, there's a certain amount of redundancy does save lives. Now, of course, you get too redundant, then you're going to start costing lives, but that's another discussion. The point is, yes, I am all about guns. I love guns. I love shooting guns. I love having guns. I don't need friends because I have guns. However, I am all about the safety of them as well, and the education, and getting across the fact that it's not about whether or not you like guns. Gun safety should just be the same as riding a bike, as learning to eat, as learning to drive a car. Just know what to do and you'll be fine. It's not going to grow legs and shoot you, I promise. And if it does, let me know, because we have bigger problems. So
goddamn Decepticons.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Decepticons, AI, Sky, it doesn't matter. The point is, if guns actually do start actually getting up and shooting people, then fine. We can talk about how guns themselves are bad at that point. But until then, they're just tools. And yes, they should be treated the same as you treat a wild lion, as you treat a giant truck, as you treat anything that has the power to kill you. With reverence, with respect, not fear. So yeah. Any more thoughts for this episode? We actually
And I
made it
think
quite
that
philosophical.
very well into the episode.
Yeah, you know, Corione, I get what you're saying. Like, we don't have these super type of philosophical discussions with Picard at the moment because we just haven't had those moments yet. And yet, out of a DS9 episode that seemed pretty straightforward, we just talked about nuclear weapons and gun control safety and all that shit. So, DS9 is still supreme Star Trek. All right. Second episode was Whispers, continuing our O'Brien Must Suffer double feature. Here we go with the storyline. O'Brien is now on his way to the planet Parada to warn them about something and is chased by the crew of Deep Space Nine through the wormhole. In his log, he tells what happened. Deep Space Nine was supposed to host peace talks between the Paradans and a rebel faction, and O'Brien was supposed to make sure the security be top-notch. He immediately noticed something strange when Keiko and Molly didn't seem to be themselves. In engineering, he found out another engineer was ordered by Cisco to already start work on the security measures. Cisco told him to concentrate on the repair of the upper pylons and ordered him to undergo a very extensive medical examination. O'Brien especially got suspicious after he found out he lost his level 1 security clearance after trying to review the logs of the security personnel. Okay, this is the second one in a row that I've read that actually is really good. I'm wondering if someone came across our DS9 reviews and is now going to IMDb and updating the storylines so they're actually decent since we're reading from them.
Well, whoever did it, thank you.
Yeah, these last two reviews looks like Arnold Tilly, or Tiley, I'm probably saying that wrong, Arnound Tiley wrote that one. And for Armageddon Game, same person. Well written, Arnoud. I'm probably saying your name wrong, and I apologize, but these were great. As a writer myself, I'm proud to have read those on my show, The Writer Brothers. Yeah. This one is, you know, it's a great mystery box that obviously, you know, you get to the mystery by the end, and it's really well thought out. Even this is one episode you could probably skip on subsequent rewatches, but even rewatching it, I was like, this, even though I know how it ends, this is still really good. But go ahead, H. Marie, with your thoughts on this episode. All right, Corione.
Well, I think we actually get a really good Bashir and O'Brien interaction after the intense medical exam. O'Brien's like, "Are you nearly finished? I believe you've poked every orifice in my body and created a few new ones." And Bashir's like, "Any dizziness, oversleeping, lack of energy, euphoria?" And O'Brien's like, "Yes, all of them, especially euphoria. Lots of euphoria," right? Like, you can tell O'Brien is losing his patience with the whole situation through their interaction. And there's a lot of great back and forth between these characters now. They really did turn them into a buddy cop duo here in a lot of ways. And it works. And the reveal through the episode where we slowly start to realize that something is just wrong and something is off and everyone is behaving a little weird. And the way the episode makes you think it's not O'Brien, because O'Brien's our point of view character, it must be everyone else, is a fantastic device that they used here to tell a really great story. And we really get some interesting conversations we can have about cloning, about some of the pieces that we go through in this episode. I thought it was really, really well done. I thought it was a great idea. I'm a little sad they didn't revisit the O'Brien's got clones potentially of him out running around out there. Plotline later to make O'Brien suffer more. But then
O'Brien's must suffer.
Yeah, like we could have a whole room of O'Brien's being tortured. I mean, it would have been.
I'm starting to like this idea.
Right? Call him Meanie's so good at acting like he's in pain, but the idea,
he's so meanie to himself.
Yes. But it was really well done. the fact that we had this episode right before it showing how great and close O'Brien and Keiko's relationship is, and then suddenly it seems so strained and off, was a fantastic way to put these two episodes together. And I'm sure that's why they put them back to back, is so we'd realize how off everyone and everything is.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I mean, this one definitely doesn't have a whole lot of philosophical, to go through. It's pretty straightforward, and like I said, it's a really good episode it's a really good example of how to do a proper contained singular episode mystery box. And I think it does a great job of, yeah, it's just a really good story.
It's good, solid, tight storytelling.
Yeah.
That does ask some interesting questions about cloning.
Yeah. Skogli, you got some thoughts?
That replicant was the word they used, was just as much O'Brien as Robot Picard is Captain Picard.
And this predates that by quite a few years, so...
Right? When his dying words tell Keiko I love her, I was like, oh, just heartbreaking, right? Because he was O'Brien. Like...
And that was without a conscious change, too. Like, it was actually straight up a full-on, like, indistinguishable copy in every way. Yeah, I really liked this episode. I think this is one of the best episodes of Deep Space Nine. I actually enjoyed it more on subsequent rewatches because I find just watching the Rosalind Chow's performance as Keiko in the beginning, like how she behaves that first morning, is just fascinating. Like, it's interesting to watch while it's mysterious. You don't know what's going on, but on the rewatch, I really, really got into like looking at their eye movements, and I'm like, yeah, this isn't your husband. I'm like, that would be so hard to deal with. I loved this episode, and I thought it delved deep into philosophically of like what makes you, like, for real. And I thought I was like, oh, this has some really good parallels to what's happening in Star Trek Picard with that, because I'm of the school that nobody has a soul, and if you recreate the chemical reaction again, that person is just as much you as the other one was. And whether if they do have souls, it died the first time they went through the transporter, and everybody's just a soulless automaton now. Yeah, that's definitely some interesting points. H. Marie, did you get your thoughts together?
I think so. I always feel so bad for O'Brien because he's kind of like my favorite one-off character-ish. Every time I have to see him suffer, I'm like, but he's so nice.
That's why he must suffer. Nice guys finish last.
He's a good actor. He's a good actor, and the writers know it.
Yeah, but this episode, I actually just now while I was sitting here listening to you guys, I realized he didn't actually eat any actual food in the episode. He was only consuming this the double coffee that he was drinking. So I'm wondering if that was the power source for this duplicate, potentially, because we never really see it stop. We never really see him like go to sleep or anything. He's constantly going. And when Keiko tries to offer him food, he refuses it because she's not eating it. So either he's thinking something was poisoned, but maybe it's because his duplicate wasn't supposed to consume food. Maybe he's only supposed to consume, probably, I'm assuming, caffeine as his energy source. And that's why he's acting so weird, is because he's every functioning adult. We're so hyped up on caffeine that we don't eat, we don't sleep, we barely pay attention to anybody except ourselves and what we're doing. We hyper focus. That's exactly what he did in this episode.
To start calling coffee Ketracel Black.
Nice. Yeah. I like that. I don't drink coffee anymore. I'm a tea drinker myself these days, but that's Ketracel Black. That's That's a good one. I like that a lot. All right. Any last thoughts for DS9 this week before we head back to the future and get some more thoughts on Picard? Cool. All right. Turning now back to Star Trek Picard, because we did get a very special guest, Mr. CC Karaoke, coming back to the Writer Brothers for the first time in what feels like a long time, but life has a way of getting in the way of, pop culture. So
Happy to be back.
Yeah, so CC Karaoke, you decided to finally catch up on Picard from episode 1 this week, and so we're just going to turn it to you for a little bit so you can share your thoughts from episode 1 all the way to what we just watched this week.
Wow, pressure's on. Well, I mean, honestly, you mentioned it's been a while since I've been on the Writer Brothers. It's funny because the last time I was on the Writer Brothers was when we were all covering Strange New Worlds. And I bring that up because it's my only actual experience with Kurtzman Trek. I mean, I left after fan films were canceled, and I had absolutely no interest in coming back. And about, I can't remember exactly what it was, 5-6 episodes into that show, I mean, I just couldn't go on. I couldn't stand it. It was so, I was so dismayed by it that I just couldn't keep watching the episodes and coming on to review them. So my feelings towards all of that was that there's just no way. And I have been watching Mandalorian with my dad. And then Mandalorian kind of got a little bit suspect, right? So I was talking with him, and he was like, well, why don't we watch Star Trek instead? And I've had a lot of trepidation about it, but I watched Metallis's previous show, 12 Monkeys, and I love it. And if anyone listening to this hasn't seen it, I highly recommend it. So I have a bit of a predisposition to enjoying his work on that level. And he got all this positive word of mouth. So my dad and we sat down for a couple of days and we watched the 5 episodes. And long story short, I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them a heck of a lot more than I enjoyed any of that Strange New Worlds. And I might even qualify it as Star Trek. Now, certainly my dad asked me at one point, do you think Gene Roddenberry would have been okay with this? And that's a very difficult question to answer. Obviously, my favorite Star Trek series, DS9, was not Gene Roddenberry either.
Actually, I would argue it is. It's just rules lawyering Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah, okay.
But this is straight up not Gene.
I found a little bit of a parallel there, not just because of the bad guys being pulled from those plot lines, but in that it's I think the phrase I got from another person in the chat once was respectful deconstruction. DS9 isn't necessarily completely hopeful in that it does deal with war and certainly a bit of a, the Federation isn't perfect. But what I think I would say about DS9 is that it appreciates the fact that there is a much wider universe, that the Federation has these ideals, but other civilizations have different ideals. And what I'm getting from Picard is that, at least so far, is I feel like they are respecting the Federation. Just with little quotes, and I'll say on the other side, Metallis with 12 Monkeys, sometimes some of his things don't hit the mark, but they didn't completely derail the show, and I don't think anything here has either. Just little moments like Picard saying the Federation is known for a reason. And I don't get the feeling that the show is ripping apart those ideals. I think they are respecting that there are other cultures in the universe, like the Ferengi, obviously. You get that awesome moment where Worf comes in and well, slices and dices There's nothing quite pacifist about that. So that made me wonder about the previews and all that. I was like, but I don't know if this is going to come off as confusing, but I find the show has a hopeful tone, not a pessimistic one. Especially the end of the 4th episode. It's like, this is a rebirth. And the end of the 1st episode, if you noticed in the credits, there's that like don't hold grudges and don't, I felt like that was a message to the fans. It's like, this is something new. Don't hold for revenge over the previous sins,
Yeah, I think it's a bit it's a bit overzealous to assume that, like, until Disney retcons its own canon with Star Wars, no IP has gone so far to disavow the previous iterations. And I get it. A lot of people don't like Discovery, don't like, you don't like Strange New Worlds, like I said. To me, Strange New Worlds is a Star Trek short film because I'll watch the first episode and leave it there. And then I'm going to try season 2, but I have my own, I've cooled off it. So, but my point is, I wanted to go back to what you mentioned. The way that I look at it is, first of all, when it comes to canon, the canon is at the behest of the creator. And so you could argue that post season 3 of TNG on is basically fan fiction, and that Roddenberry wasn't there to, say yay or nay. And while they did have the Bible to follow for a time, obviously, as Corione mentioned, we rules lawyered that Bible with DS9. However, you're right. DS9 is a respectable deconstruction of the idea of what Roddenberry believed in, and it shows the reality, but it also preserves the hope in the process. The way I see it is TNG is the Golden Boy flagship. The Enterprise is out there with Jean-Luc Picard, the poster child of the Federation captain. All the best people are on the Enterprise. Okay, if all the best people are on the Enterprise, what does that leave with the rest of the fleet? That's why Lower Decks doesn't come off as offensive to me anymore since season 3 is better, because if you think about it, okay, sure, we want to all be the TNG crew, but having served in the real military, I understand that some units are just going to be a little bit more disgruntled and less enthusiastic about serving in the Federation as others. There's going to still be a human element to Starfleet, whether we want to, agree with it or not. And I think DS9 does a great job of showing, okay, here's the reality of the Utopia vision. But even given the circumstance that Sisko is given, he still tries to be more like Picard in the sense that he believes in the Federation values. And you're right in that I feel that's what Picard is doing. I felt that as we got closer to this show launching, that we were going to see a darkness into light transition, in that the show was going to take the grim, dark reality of New Trek and try to direct it back towards hope and optimism. And I hope that's what we get by the end, because here's the thing too. We can't just abandon the Drekkies. What would Gene say about this TNG show? I don't know. What would he say about Discovery? What would he say about any of the other stuff? Actually, real quick, Eddie Arndt writes in, sorry guys, I've been a little busy this week to chime in, but absolutely loving Picard. Mando was definitely confusing after this week, and DS9 is still my most favorite series. Hey, we're glad you're here, man. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
So it's like we have you as well, Eddie. Thanks for stopping by. We have this, that's what I hope is going to play out, because like I said, we can't get rid of the Drekkies. We can't abandon them. And whether or not Gene Roddenberry would endorse these shows, disavow these shows, you also got to remember, Roddenberry hated Star Trek too. He was not a fan.
It's kind of true, isn't it?
But he never once belittled a single fan for liking Star Trek that he didn't. And that was my takeaway from what, the idea. I get that Roddenberry wasn't perfect. I get that Roddenberry, was a human and had human errors and didn't, I don't idolize the guy like Jesus. I don't even idolize Jesus that same way anymore. He was, however, respectful of the fan base because he believed in his Federation idealism. And that's what I try to get across to a lot of fellow Legacy fans is, guys, let's try to look at the bigger picture and let's step back and see where Star Trek is at. Go ahead, Scogli.
But what I like to try to get across to people is, in TNG, it was so like almost, hear me out, naively optimistic. I'm like 10 years old. I'm like, questions about the money. They're like, don't think about it too much. They're just like, it's a utopia. It's like, but what about all the nasty admirals? It's like, don't think about it too much. And you're just kind of, it's a utopia. Just don't think about it too much. And you're just like, I've got questions, and then that's just not good enough anymore. And it needs to be more realistic.
And that's why I think that,
I think there's a balance. I think I really hope they restore a balance with the new show. And like, I heard some people say by episode 7, you're going to be beaming with optimism. Just so I'm waiting for it. I want to see that balance come back.
I hope by episode 4 or 5, I'm beaming with optimism for Mando. I really do. So I hope for that all of us by the end of these shows respectively, we can all be saying positive things by the end of them. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's what all of us want, right? All of us want good shows that we all enjoy on series. And for all the writers and aspiring writers in this group, we all want good quality writing, right? We want to be able to sit there and take a look and go, man, I've got to crib that the next time I've got a novel idea, right? Like we all want those pieces, right? We all want to feel inspired by it. And when I say inspired, I don't necessarily mean you have to be hopeful. I don't necessarily mean you have to be, drinking the Kool-Aid, but we have to be able to sit there going, oh man, this is something I can sink my teeth in and think about for more than the watch length of the video, right? We want to have to be able to go back and go, I could watch this episode like 20 times and learn new stuff. That's what we're doing with Deep Space Nine. I'm watching this again and going, I'm picking up on little subtle things that were in the background that I didn't notice the first time, right? These are the pieces of the puzzle that we all want, right? If the majority of the fan base is finally getting that with the latest season of Picard, and they've got the math down, man, that is so awesome. And I truly, truly hope that is how it stays. And even if Trek winds up leaving me behind, I will be so happy that majorities of the fandom have been picked up by it, that I'd be still cool with it. Okay. That's where I'm at, right? Same goes with Mando. Like, if Star Wars gets back to the point where people go, dude, I want to visit a galaxy far, far away and, slip into a fighter again and go pew, pew, pew. I mean, I'm down with it, right? Even if it leaves me behind, so long as it's picking up a primary audience, I'm good with it. The problem has been the last, since 2016 or so, they've been shedding audiences. And now we're finally getting to a place where they're picking it back up again. And I think that's wonderful.
And they really are picking it back up because with Mando failing and all that, there's not a whole lot of places for people to go right now. They have an opportunity. And part of me wonders if season 5 of Discovery doesn't come out and just trash on all the goodwill. But on the other hand, they come out at the end of this show and announce they've greenlit Star Trek Titan with Captain Shaw. And they made a couple of really good casting choices here. Like Geordie LaForge's daughter has this Uhura-like classiness to her that I could see really developing well over the course of a series. And I don't know what they're going to do with Picard's son, if they're going to kill him off or not. I kind of hope that they end on a hopeful note and he actually joins Starfleet, joins the Titan, and becomes part of that crew. And now you got 3 and you got 7 of 9.
Actually, I'm really hoping at the end of this season, Jack winds up taking over the Vineyard.
That would be cool too.
And continues the legacy of the Picard line.
I'll take it either way. I do see a potential. They've made some really good casting choices, right? With Picard, is I guess what I'm getting at. And if they can take that, because nothing's gonna take you down faster than poor casting and uninteresting characters. But they're showing me that they can actually cast well. If they translate that off onto a Star Trek Titan-like show, and then come back to embracing that exploratory side with the hopefulness they're injecting, I think that Star Trek could actually recover pretty quickly.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm all for Star Trek Titan. I'm also for a show that tries to go back to the Roddenberry Bible just to see if that's even, viable. Because on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, give us a show with the Roddenberry Bible, and then I'm like, but the one show that actually did that got canceled after 3 seasons, and then TNG had to scrap its formula by season 3 because 1 and 2 just weren't working. So maybe the Roddenberry Bible isn't exactly as great as we think it should be, and
I wouldn't mind a mix.
yeah, and that's the other point I was going to make too, is I've said this before and I'll keep saying it again, and I think this is proof positive at this point, is Star Trek does benefit from diverse shows. There's Star Trek fans that we wouldn't have without Star Trek Prodigy. And Prodigy, I've heard, is actually decent. I haven't watched it yet. I don't know if I'm going to. It just doesn't really tickle my fancy that much. But I haven't heard a whole lot of bad stuff about it like I have for Discovery and Picard season 1 and 2. Lower Decks even started to win me over by season 3 because they were finally having the jokes and making the funny stuff. But they were also getting back to good Trek. Go ahead, Scogli.
Whenever somebody mentions Gene's vision, what comes to my head is Gene's vision. That episode where Wesley falls in the flower bed and all the guys have camel toes and shit.
Oh man, that is that is not Code of Honor bad, but that's one of the bottom of the barrel episodes for Trek easily.
That's what comes to mind when I think of Gene's vision.
Well, okay, when we're talking about the Roddenberry Bible, because I have actually read it's not really a Bible, but the Gene Roddenberry Bible. And there are pieces that I disagree with because it does make writing more challenging, right? One of his big pieces was that members of a Federation crew can't argue with each other. They can argue and have disagreements with external forces, but not internal to the Federation. That I don't think works. I think you can have the arguments so long as they get resolved in a way that is mutually acceptable to both parties.
And I think that was best exemplified in Picard episode 3 and 4 when they basically resolved that, whoops, we were out of line thing. I think that was an example of how to do that properly.
Exactly. And I think that would work, right? So do I think Gene's vision 100% pure distilled? It's like alcohol, right? 100% pure alcohol will kill you. But 75% is a pretty good time, right? So I think that's the takeaway when it comes to Gene Roddenberry's vision is you have to distill it down a little, you have to add a little bit of impurity in it to make it work. And you have to be careful how you add the impurities, but I think it can still work. It just needs a little bit of, a little bit of Jamaican spices in your rum, right?
Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Well, I mean, look, this is how they got around it. Look, the Changeling infiltration thing, they've done this story arc, only it was little creepy crawlies that crawled into the back of your neck, right? And that's originally what one of the authors did specifically to get around Gene's nobody in Starfleet argues mandate, was he went, I'm going to write an invasion arc so that we can specifically have a phaser fight in Starfleet headquarters. And you know what? Gene looked at the script and said, yeah, this is fantastic. I love it. Right? Because at the end of the day, he realized I can't have story elements as a perfect utopia. I have to throw a little bit of grease or a little bit of sand in the gears for there to be yummy bits of flavor in the mix. Right?
Yeah, so I think the more Star Trek shows we can get, continue to get, and, the thing is, too, is people want to complain about how bad Discovery was and how bad the first 2 seasons were, and I'm kind of starting to get to that point where I'm like, okay, can we really say that it would have been better to not have these ideas and to let Star Trek die? Or can we maybe just accept the fact that we now have these examples of what bad Star Trek can be? We now know just how bad it can get. We can probably do worse. I don't want to do worse. I think we've learned our lesson with what happens when you put message over characters and plot, and what happens when you let actors think they know the characters when they kind of really don't. Because this is the first time I felt that Picard's Picard. I didn't feel it in season 1, obviously, and I didn't care about season 2 by then. But even with the whole cybernetic robot silliness, Riker's right. Still the same man. I believe it. So, Carrie, why don't you go ahead and share some final thoughts regarding Picard, and then because we got to close it out here soon.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I haven't watched the first 2 seasons, and neither did my dad. So we walked in with basically no knowledge of Kurtzman Trek canon at all. I mean, other than those 5 or 6 episodes of Strange New Worlds I watched, I have no idea about Kurtzman Trek. I really don't. I know from those episodes that I hated it, but that's honestly all I know. So we were not confused by anything. We were also not impacted by anything. So if this show already said that those first 2 seasons are canon, we didn't know it. We weren't confused by any part of those episodes that made us think, oh, what was that previous storyline? The only one that I was even aware of was Picard is a robot. And that's why that's the only reason it struck me. Those 2 times in the first 5 episodes where they referred to his cybernetic flesh, if I didn't know that Picard was supposed to be a robot in those first 2 seasons, what I would have thought was they're referencing Locutus of Borg, because they started the very first episode with Borg, and they started their interaction with Shaw when he's drinking the wine at the table, and he gets on Picard about Borg. Now, if Raffi comes onto the ship and they start having a long conversation in episode 6 about their previous lesbian relationship, that's going to take me out of it. That might make me stop watching it. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think if they were, then the people who had seen the whole season, like Robert Mayer Burnett, would have said something to warn us about that. And I think as long as they just don't get all caught up on those otherwise established ideas and just move on, people might be willing to move on with them.
Yeah, and there's any number of headcanon retcons, any number of explanations we can throw in there if we need them. But I think at this point, because this is the other thing, speaking outside of the show itself, that a lot of people are not paying attention to or acknowledging. But there's 2 things we need to acknowledge. One, Disco's done after season 5. I'm not watching season 5, not even out of morbid curiosity. I might consider the last episode, but I'm not watching season 5. I'm not won over on Kurtzman Trek. 2, and this is the big thing right now, that a lot of people are not noticing or talking about or acknowledging, and I think it needs to be acknowledged because it kind of tells us some of the internal rumors at Paramount that may be going on, and if anybody wants to try and do more follow-up because you got better connections.
I have info.
Okay, so I'm about to say the fact that Kurtzman has been dead-ass silent. Like, not a single word about Picard Season 3. Nothing. And now, I get he's not on Twitter actively like Metalis has been doing pretty impressive customer service, by the way. Or Dave Blass, who's been, sharing his experience on the show. Kurtzman, I haven't heard a peep. The only thing I've heard from him was, Discovery Season 5, it sucks, it gotta end. But I didn't even actually read the thing. I just knew. That was the first time I heard him talk about Star Trek publicly. There's been nothing about Picard. But go ahead, Corion. We got a couple minutes, so before we gotta close it out.
Okay, so real quick, Kurtzman has more or less been told to keep quiet if he wants to maintain being an executive producer. So that's more of a, somebody finally pulled the leash on him. So that's 1. 2, another piece of this is Paramount has effectively acknowledged that Kurtzman has damaged the brand and are trying to distance him from the brand as much as possible in order to try to make basically get fans to believe that, well, this isn't Kurtzman Trek anymore, it's actually good Trek, and therefore we can sit and watch it, right? They can't freely admit, it's like with Doctor Who. They're never going to freely admit that, Chinbul was in any way, the problem, right? They will say, well, it was time for a change and things move on and so on. That's what's going to happen with Kurtzman. We're going to hear, well, it was time for a change. People move on to new projects. That'll be the long-term story, what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, and I'll just take real quick to point out something. It's like, you brought it up, Karaoke, that the whole what would Gene think? Well, why don't we take that thought to Kurtzman? I don't really care to see him punished. I don't even care if he's on it as an executive producer. If his influence is taken away, fine. Because would Roddenberry, want to ruin the guy's career and life forever? Would he want to cancel Kurtzman over this? No. He would say, you tried your best, bud. Time to move on. And that's all I want at this point. Or just like I said, keep him in an office away from the set like they did KK for the first 2 seasons of Mandalorian. I do not care if his name is on it because it doesn't matter if he's not influencing the show. That's basically
meaningless, yeah.
Exactly. It's just, I get to, have my name on a thing that I'm not even a part of it. It's almost more insulting if you really think about it. That's like if someone made a Galaxia TV show or movie and didn't put my name on it, but it wasn't my Galaxia story. That's what I would equate that to. And that would be the biggest slap in the face that I could ever receive out of life.
Fair enough, but that being said, if anyone wants to give me an executive producer credit on anything for doing nothing, I'm more than willing to accept that.
Congratulations, I'll update the credits and finally add H. Marie, and it looks like I gotta maybe put Scogli. Scogli, did you have a good time tonight?
Oh, I had a blast. I was thoroughly expecting the story. I was expecting a meth head to have a meltdown in the bathroom. I was like, just waiting for it.
All right.
I had a good time.
Right. Well, I'm Peter York with the Writer Brothers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. This has been a presentation of the Writer Brothers Tuesday Night Live Show. The Writer Brothers, restoring respect into discourse.